It is yet another episode of Rob in the Morning, and we got some interesting stuff to talk about today. And I want to start off the bat with a story that I think is a nice one. It's a good thing, especially considering how many people deal with this type of issue on a daily basis, and that's the fact that hearing aids are going to become over the counter. You're going to be able to buy over the counter hearing aids, um, which is it is awesome. This is actually a huge plus side to things because a lot of children deal with it, a lot of adults, senior citizens. There's a lot of people that deal with hearing loss, and um, they say it's actually at least according to the FDA, if hearing loss was officially considered a disability, it would be the largest disability class in the country. So the FDA, obviously recognizing that, has decided to make hearing aids in general cheaper, and they're going to get much better. They're going to be much easier to get a hold of. I mean, this is huge for all those people that deal with some sort of hearing loss. Even if it is just minor, it's enough to, at least if you go and buy something over the counter, it may be able to benefit you, and it might be something temporary. It's not something crazy. And this was going on in back in 2017 when Congress passed legislation to create a over-the-counter hearing aid category. And it was widely supported throughout Congress, and in fact, President Trump ended up signing it into law. But then nothing was really done. It kind of took a little bit of a break, and then finally, things started to pick back up again. And I think the FDA kind of looked at things and said, okay, let's see what we can do. And then President Biden ends up signing an executive order to help kind of push things. So according to the article here on CNN Health, about 1 in 8 people in the U.S. 12 and older has hearing loss in both ears, and the rate increases significantly with age. About a quarter of people 65 to 74 have hearing loss, and that goes up to 50% around age 75. But only about 16% of the tens of millions of people with hearing loss use an actual hearing aid. Here's what the FDA is estimating. You could save up to $2,800 a pair. And they're also anticipating that people will see over-the-counter hearing aids as early as October of this year. So again, even if they're temporary, it's not even that bad to get an over-the-counter hearing aid. I mean, that's because, if you can go out and you can buy headphones, and you can buy earbuds, and you can buy Bluetooth headsets still. I don't know how many people use them, but you can still go out and buy that stuff. It should be reasonable to buy an over-the-counter hearing aid. I think it's only right. And now the biggest thing is will your insurance cover a device like this? Well, obviously, if you happen to have a health savings account or something, obviously that can be a huge benefit to purchasing because obviously they are considered a health purpose. So you basically can, I think, afford these. However, just in general, they're not cheap. We all know this. Hearing aids are not cheap. In fact, according to a study, on average, people spend about, at the minimum, $4,000 out of pocket for devices for both ears. Now you single it down, to just one ear, it might be a little bit cheaper, but at the end of the day, you total it and the cost up, it's expensive. It's not cheap. Um, and some offer them as low as $1,400, and then some go all the way up to $6,000, depending on the brand, depending on the amount of technology that's involved in it. Obviously, the cheaper they are, the less advancement it's going to have. The more expensive, obviously, you're thinking, okay, it's going to be even better. Now the big thing is, with it being over the counter, our costs going to drop. Well, that's a tough pill to swallow, I think, because it probably won't. You're still going to be seeing some fairly expensive costs when you're buying the hearing aid. But still, at the end of the day, having it over the counter rather than being something that you have to go and see a doctor and do all this stuff with, it's awesome for people that, just they want to live life hearing things correctly instead of having some sort of lack in one ear or the other of the ability just to hear sounds and hear people talking. I know that's a big thing, is when you're talking to people and they're saying what they can't hear you, whatever. Can you repeat that? It can get a little frustrating for people that are like, well, I don't want to repeat myself all the time, but you also have to take into consideration what maybe so-and-so is going through. So this is awesome. I think this is actually a great story and a huge plus side to what can be done in this country. I mean, we can do things like this. It's amazing, and I think this is something that can push down the line even more stuff. More things that could potentially pop up. Obviously, the FDA does stick its nose in a lot of business, but this is a good thing. This is a very good thing that's being done, and this is the type of stuff we want to see. At least I think it's the stuff we want to see. Now, this is where it gets a little weird. We are now hearing that we have our first possible case of human to dog monkeypox transmission. Now, monkeypox, I don't think, is necessarily something that, as a widespread, we should necessarily go crazy about like we did with COVID. I think it's something that is carried a different way. And obviously, everybody knows now monkeypox is more of a transmitted disease through bodily fluids, similar to that of like HIV, hepatitis, all that type of stuff. So they're now reporting that 2 individuals in Paris were diagnosed with monkeypox back in early June. And then, of course, 12 days after their symptoms started, their 4-year-old Italian Greyhound dog also started showing symptoms. The dog developed lesions and tested positive for the same type of monkeypox as one of the owners. According to the report, the 2 individuals said that they let their dog sleep in bed with them and that they had been careful to keep their pet away from other animals or humans from the start of their own symptoms, before even the dog's symptoms started. To the best of our knowledge, the kinetics of symptom onset in both patients and subsequently in their dog suggest human to dog transmission of monkeypox virus, as it's written in the report. Now, this is not saying that necessarily, I mean, obviously, yes. Could your dog potentially get it from somebody else? Maybe. There maybe is that case. I'm going to go on a limb and say it's not necessarily going to happen, and I think people are going to look at this, and I know a lot of people are laughing about monkeypox. I get it. Okay. The name of it sounds funny. The idea of yet another disease out there after we're still trying to recover from this COVID. I get it. All right. It's a lot to stomach. I understand. Everybody holds a position on things, and hey, that's fair. However, I don't think you can just necessarily look past these type of things. Um, in fact, it's kind of like with chronic wasting disease that we see in deer. It's something that we should take a look at and consider the possible future of that disease. Will it become something more serious, or is it just going to be a transmittable disease among animals? So these are the things that we need to kind of focus on, I think, as a country, and just in science and medical advancement as well, because we can learn a lot. And I think that's the beauty of investigative medicine, is you can do things and learn, and you can grow. Even if things maybe don't work right off the bat, you can learn. And that's kind of the beauty with COVID too. There is beauty in it, as much as it is 100% negative. There is a little bit to take away from, and that is the fact that we at least can investigate and we can narrow it down to figure out, okay, how can we avoid something like this happening again, or at least how can we prevent a widespread of it? And that's the thing with monkeypox that they're trying to figure out, is how do we prevent it from becoming a pandemic in certain communities? Kind of like the AIDS epidemic. You look at how just massive that's been since the 80s. And it's not going away. That's the thing. It's not going away. It might have lost some steam, but it's not going away. And that's going to happen with monkeypox. I think things are going to continue to progress. And we're going to learn, and we're going to be able to kind of figure things out as we go along. But in the communities that we have, especially the communities where monkeypox has been hitting a little bit harder, and that's the gay communities, you need to be a little bit more protective. That's it. Just be a little bit more protective of yourself. Similar to that of just even whether you're a homosexual couple or a heterosexual couple. Protection is huge. Okay. That's the thing. When you're looking at widespread diseases, the best thing we can do is protect ourselves and stay healthy and maintain a good personal hygiene. Make sure that the people we are accompanying are also in somewhat of good hygiene and good standard. I think it's only right. I recognize and I understand there's a lot of people out there that love those random hookups. But it can be dangerous. That can be very dangerous. And that's something that I think people need to look at and consider the next time that they decide, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something. I'm going to go out and have some fun or whatever. You need to consider some of the safe practices. Consider the ways that you can protect yourself. Now, we've got medical teams working to make sure that we can avoid possible circumstances with sexually transmitted diseases and infections and all sorts of other things. Even just from getting cuts, you can exchange bodily fluid that way. If you're an EMT or something, there's all sorts of ways you can get diseases. Now, the best thing we can do is protect ourselves by being clean, by being healthy. And we can kill this. We can kill these diseases right off the bat. Can't get rid of them completely, but we can at least avoid them on our end. That's the best thing I can say. Now, moving off of that topic, just because it is a topic that I really don't want to get a lot into. I just don't care to get into it as far. I think my knowledge of it is just as much as everybody else's. I read the same stories. And that's the thing with my show. I'm going to read a lot of the stories that you may end up reading at some point or have read. But I'm still going to talk about it and give my opinion, even if my opinion is a little far-fetched. Kind of like this story. This story is actually really crazy to think about. A 12-year-old boy in the Little League World Series is now in critical condition after falling from a bunk bed in the dormitory over in Pennsylvania. He suffered a fractured skull from this fall. Oh God. See, this is always my fear of bunk beds. And, when I was a kid, this always was my thing with like the top bunk. Obviously, it's something that, you think about as a kid. You always have that fear of like, what if? And I always thought, well, what happens if I fall off a bunk bed? I can't recall ever doing it, but I remember hearing stories of people actually falling. And here we go again. He fell out of his bed in the middle of the night while he was sleeping. And he's now put into a medically induced coma after he underwent emergency surgery to stop the bleeding. Obviously, we wish this kid the best. I can't imagine being the parents in this position. He's not actually from Pennsylvania either. He's a member of Utah's Snow Canyon Little League squad. And according to his father here, who is an assistant coach on the team, this is the statement that he put out. There was a lot of blood in his brain and a lot of pressure being caused. He had what was called an epidural hematoma. He fractured his skull and in the meantime punctured an artery outside the brain, which caused the bleeding. And so far, here's what the doctors are stating too. I guess some things are looking better. At least this is as of Tuesday afternoon. The boy, excuse me. His name is Easton Oliverson. Now, his doctors were weaning him off of painkillers and scaling back his oxygen with positive results. And a neurosurgeon, of course, told his family that his CT scan looked good. Looked great, actually. And that the Easton was also able to respond physically when one of his friends spoke to him on the phone. His friend told him on the phone to put his thumb up, and he did. And these are just little things that help. Obviously, this boy is in some trauma, and this is just the unfortunate thing. The craziest thing about this stuff is I understand the pressure that these kids are under. If you haven't watched the Little League World Series, it's actually quite entertaining in a lot of ways. And a lot of these kids end up becoming players in future ball leagues, whether it be MLB or minor leagues or whatever the case may be. A lot of them end up going that route because they're talented. They're talented young kids, and this kid's no different. He's obviously talented. He's playing at a high level. But I think the pressure that these kids are under is insane. I think the biggest thing is baseball is put aside for moments like this. It's put aside for things like when your teammate, your friend is going through something really bad. You have to just put everything aside and say, you know what, I couldn't care less about this game right now. And I think that's the big thing with his teammates. And if you've ever seen the videos, and this is my rant I'm going to go on here, of these sport parents. These kids are trying to just have fun and enjoy themselves. Some of them obviously want to make a career out of sports, and I don't blame you. The percentages are not really in your favor when you're trying to get a career in sports. It's tough. And they're just trying to make the most of it. And you got a lot of these parents that just go to the games and absolutely act like buffoons. and they put so much pressure on their kids at home, and they're just constantly on them about making the most. There's a lot of good parents out there of children in sports, but I think there's a certain group that really are just awful parents. And I've seen the videos where the parents are just absolutely heckling the umpires to death in a little league game, where the umpires just throw their say, "I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't. I'm not going to put up with it," and they leave. I've seen it. And the parents obviously, oh, what a baby. He would leave. You're supposed to just take it. No, 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 no. You're supposed to set an example for your children, and you're going to games and you're acting like complete dickheads. See, there's a difference. Your children are the one acting mature while you're the one acting like a buffoon. And the umpires, certainly their jobs are not always going to be done correctly. They're going to make mistakes, just like everybody else makes mistakes. Every human makes mistakes. That's what makes us human. But these parents, man, they are insane. Some of them. And I wish, you could just line them all up and just chuck baseballs at them. Just give them a little taste of like, hey, this is not cool, okay? Better yet, put them in the position of being an umpire. Let's see if they do the job better. Seeing as though everybody's an armchair critic. Now, I'm not saying that umpires always act correctly in these situations. Some of them do act out of range and take things a little over the top, and they can say some things that get mean. I've seen umpires run after people, man. I've seen it. But I do think there's a certain class you have to show while you're attending these events. Now, I got a buddy of mine who he goes to, there's this thing in Minnesota called Town Ball, and I think I brought it up on a past episode here in Minnesota. And it's pretty cool. It's, the little small towns get a team, they got local local people playing, having a good time. And the crowds are fun. It's you're supporting baseball in your community. It's a good little kind of community outing. It's similar to that of like going to, potlucks and luncheons and all this stuff like fish fries. It's kind of in the same boat. And the fun part is you can get involved in it. You can get pretty pumped up if you're supporting your team, your local town team. You can get pretty crazy. My buddy's a big fan. And he goes to the games. I've been to a few. They are fun. And me, I appreciate the art of baseball. So I'm more looking at like all the little nuances and stuff. And I'm kind of creating plays in my head. And I'm like, okay, here's what I would do if I was in his shoes. I'm kind of doing that myself. I'm not a great baseball player, but I sure do have a solid mentality when it comes to the game. But I'm sitting at a game a couple weeks ago, and I got this woman behind me who is just, and of course, she happens to be sitting directly behind me, so every time she's yelling, it's in my ear. And you can imagine that feeling, that pain of like that shriek of just yelling, and then, oh, I hate it. I hate it. And my buddy, of course, who normally, he tells me, yeah, I heckle at these games and I kind of have a lot of fun and I make jokes and stuff like that. And I think that's all fun and games. Even he was like, oh, my Lord. He was kind of like, wow, she was completely out of line on sometimes. Now, her son plays for an opposing team. And I was just enamored by it. Not just the fact that you're so open with it, because I think that's fine, and I think it's fun, and that's all great. You want to support your son or whatever. I completely understand that, and hey, if I'm a parent, I'm going to be in son. I want to support my son as best as possible. But I mean, she is going off about every little thing, and it was just like, it was almost to the point where it's like, just sit down, enjoy the game, enjoy the damn game. I'm not somebody that's very upfront and confrontational. I actually find that to be something that makes situations worse and not necessarily better. So I'm kind of the one that's like, hey, let's just relax, we'll be okay, and it's just a fun game. You know, we don't have to go crazy and look at this and go nuts. And yeah, things are not always going to go the way that you want, but guess that's what it is. Guys here, they don't do this their number one priority. This is a hobby. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And their biggest benefit is kind of the exercise behind it, the ability to work as a team, the ability to maybe become a leader. There's a lot of values and a lot of things that you can get from being involved in this. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you shouldn't be a fan and then you shouldn't show your emotion, but there is a line that needs to be drawn, and that's when you are just absolutely hammering on somebody and just making them feel like garbage. I think it's just wrong, and I've seen it on the videos, I've seen it in person. And the biggest example that I could come up with here was this lady doing this. Some guys in the stands that were just watching, having a good time, made a comment about a pitch being thrown and ended up hitting a batter. And, they made a comment saying, "Oh, I wonder if that was intentional." And the lady's like, "That was not intentional. They would never do that." She was just going nuts. And it's like, look, they were just making a comment. In fact, it was more of a question than a comment, but they were making a comment nonetheless. And she just went off. And I thought, my Lord, this is just insane. I mean, this is just crazy. Why you're taking this small time thing so seriously. Yes, I get it. As a community, it's great, and you're getting outside and you're enjoying yourself. But come on, if you're not going to do that in church, you're not going to do that here. So that's the biggest thing I can say is you need to just have class, and that goes with any sport, no matter what you're watching. Basketball, we've seen it in the NBA. We've seen fans act like complete fools and make asses of themselves. Football, overseas in soccer and stuff like that, you see it all the time. In fact, there was just a game over in England where you had two coaches kind of going at it. They were shaking hands, and one didn't pull his hand away, and he yanked them back, and it was a huge thing. All of a sudden, they're in each other's faces and yelling and screaming. It's just there's so much that I get it. Sports is a highly competitive thing, and you're sitting there and you're enjoying it and you're rooting for your team, but we need to be better as people, man. This is where we can be better. We look at it as fun, but it's not fun when people are getting into fights and causing chaos and ruckus in the stands. It's just not fun, man. It's just not. It's not the part of the game that makes it great. It makes it unbearable sometimes, and it's embarrassing to watch this stuff happen. And the biggest thing that comes out of this is you see a story like this with this young boy who falls out of his bunk bed. He's just trying to sleep because he's got to go and perform. And he ends up falling out of bed and getting hurt. And everything stops. Everything stops because at the end of the day, real life is still real. It doesn't stop. And the thing is, we can all take better care of ourselves. We absolutely can. In fact, during a Little League World Series game, there was actually a spot where a pitcher threw a ball. It hit a batter in the head. I think it hit his helmet. I can't recall exactly where it hit, but the pitcher was a young boy. He was upset. He was upset that he threw a bad pitch, and he was crying on the mound. He was distraught. And the opposing players came over, and they were like, "Hey, it's okay. Everything's gonna be all right." That's the type of stuff we want to see. But you got parents out there yelling, "Oh God, how dare you!" And I even read a comment on there saying, "Oh, the kid really cared. He would have ran to the plate and asked for the kid." But it's like, no, because in that moment you're in shock. See, this is the thing. As adults, we're supposed to set examples. And if you can't set a correct example, then get the fuck out. That's it. That's the end of the rant. And there's a lot of things that are coming up. A lot of things that are coming up. But I'm going to keep this episode short, mostly because my voice is just not there right now. But I was able to speak a little bit, and I had a little bit of fun. But I'm going to end the show on a high note, as always. I always try to end on a high note. And as tough as it can be to end on a high note, we are going to try. I started the show on a high note with the hearing aid thing. I thought that was a good thing to see. But I want to talk about a little entertainment news. And that is that one of my newer favorite shows is Better Call Saul. And I started watching it on Netflix because I didn't watch it from the start. But they just had their series finale recently. And they had their 6 seasons. And boy, oh boy, is this show great compared to Breaking Bad. It's good. Very good. Can't say it's better than Breaking Bad, but it is good. And the positive out of this is, when you look at TV and you see, like, there is a lot of stuff that gets recycled and it is boring. But then you get, like, these type of shows that are just unique and they create their own concept. Now, Better Call Saul is technically a prequel to Breaking Bad, and then eventually it leads up to the exact time when Breaking Bad started. But the nice thing is when people take full advantage of these shows and make them into something unique. Write your own scripts. Do your own stories. Don't recycle content. Just come out with your own stuff. And this is what I love about TV shows like Better Call Saul. Does it end? Yes. As most shows do, it ends. And that's the sad part. But this show ends on a high note by being another fantastic story in the Breaking Bad, I guess we want to call it the Breaking Bad epic, as it is. Because I'm sure there's going to be more coming out of this. There's going to be more shows and more shows. Because there's just so much you can do with these stories. So much. So many characters that have their own backstories that are impressive. And this is why it's so positive. Because you know what? These shows are giving people their breaks, too. They're giving people their first chance to really get somewhere. Bob Odenkirk, for the most part, this is the biggest role he's ever had. Absolutely, 100% it is. When he took on the Saul Goodman role, this is the hugest thing he did. Before then, he was kind of all over the place. He was doing this and that. He was a comedy guy. He was doing a lot of television. He would just pop up in shows. He was all over the place. You would see him here and there, but you never really got to understand him as a character actor. You never got to see that. And the thing with this character, Saul Goodman, is if you've watched Breaking Bad, you know how great that character can be, how funny it can be, how just unique to him it can really be. And this show created that for him. This show did something impressive by just making his character even that much larger of a personality. And this is the beauty in television. You're going to see more like this. There's a lot of shows that I watch where I've never seen some of these actors before in the show, and I'm just impressed by their performances. And Netflix does a lot of them. One of my shows on there I've just thoroughly enjoyed is The Last Kingdom. And for the most part, there's people on the show I've never seen before. The entire starring cast, for the most part, I've never seen them. And so when they're getting a chance to go out there and do something major, it's huge. Kind of similar to like the Vikings show, or if you watch Game of Thrones, you see a lot of characters in there that have created their own spawn. And that's the thing, when you don't recycle content, it can be made into something impressive. The reason I say that is because I just saw some commercials for this Chucky series. And I kind of thought, do I really want to watch this? Because the movies were enough for me. So I say to all these streaming services, let's stop recycling content. Let's make our own stuff. Let's continue to create and build and give these young up and coming actors and actresses their chance to really build something for their careers. Because who knows? You may stumble upon a series like Breaking Bad. You may get that magic little touch. All you can do is try. And for that, I say thank you for listening and stay strange.